All right, well, it's 7 o'clock. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. We have one more person that may roll in, actually two more that may roll, but I think Matt's going to enjoy his son's birthday party and forget about us. So, welcome to the Kaysville City Planning Commission for November 8th, 2018. We'll go ahead and get started with item number 2, conditional use permit for residential childcare at 459 North, 300 East for Shelley Ross.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll introduce that briefly, and then the applicant. I do recognize us here this evening if you have questions of her. Ms. Ross is hoping to do childcare from her home that you can see here on the map off of 30 East, 469 North. And she's worked in daycares and commercial daycares previously, felt that she'd like to attempt it on her own, so is hoping to do it from her home at this address. She's interested mainly in having very young children, 0 to 3, infants, babies, I guess blow at her heartstrings, and so that's her desire, and is looking to have no more than 4 at a time. Ultimately, the state's pretty heavy on how they regulate childcare. They get very specific on numbers and ratios of adults to children and so forth. Under 4, technically she doesn't even have to get some of the certifications and things the state requires, so it should be pretty low-key. Having met with her and visited and been on site, she's got space for it. Staff felt that it would be okay to recommend approval without the need for additional conditions. So with that, I'll turn it over to yourself, Mr. Chair, and be willing to take questions. And again, the applicant's here if you'd like to speak with her.
Thank you. Shelley, do you want to just come up to the microphone and introduce yourself? And then we'll barrage you with questions, if that's all right.
My name is Shelley Ross, and I'm starting, hopefully, the stuffed bear daycare at my house.
And you've done this for a number of years?
I have. I've actually raised 7 children, and then I did
and you purposely
center.
Want to go back into this again?
Yeah. You know, they're pretty great kids. And I did a daycare center in Bountiful for 2 years now. I just recently quit that to start this.
Okay, great. Any questions?
I don't have any.
Then we just need a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve a conditional use permit for residential child care for Shelley Ross at 469 South, 300 East.
It's 469 North.
Oh, North, sorry.
It's
yeah,
okay.
469 North, 300 East.
I'll second.
Aye.
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 Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item number 3 is final plat approval for Trailside Subdivision, formerly Peterson Subdivision, located at 849 and 881 South Sunset Drive for Alicia Peterson.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair, for the introduction. You'll recognize the property just across the street from Centennial Junior High and the seminary building. We've had this before to consider a rezone on the property and then ultimately a preliminary plat. When it originally came before, it was very similar, a private street, 9 lots. They've actually, as they've gone through the final design, reduced that to 8 lots. But ultimately the same configuration, slightly less impact. Staff has reviewed the final plat and engineering details and is ready to recommend approval of the final plat as is in your packet. Again, the applicant is here if you have additional questions. I'd be happy to take some myself, but I think it's pretty straightforward, just matches and complies with what we expect. So I'll pass that back to the chair for any questions.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to come up and introduce yourself?
How you guys doing? Yeah, my name's Chad Peterson, and my wife is Alicia Peterson, and we also have Jim Baggs here, so I guess I'll be representing all 3 of us on this.
All right, questions, anyone?
I don't have any. I like the cutting down. That makes a really nice big lot there at the end where you combine those and realign some of those boundaries.
Is this a private road?
It is, yes.
Okay.
And did I read, we're not requiring a sidewalk?
Correct. Yeah. When they went to the council on the preliminary, the council determined that they would not require sidewalks on the private street component. So the Sunset Drive public right of way would match typical public right of way improvements, but as stated, yes, the private street would not have that.
Okay.
All right, if there's no questions, I need a motion.
I would move that we grant the final plat approval for the Trailside subdivision at 849 and 881 South Sunset Drive, as presented.
I'll second that.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, item 4, a public hearing and request to rezone 0.36 acres of property at 120 South Main Street from professional business to healthcare zoning district for Jordan Birmingham.
Okay, by way of introduction on this item, you'll be familiar with the property as it's just south of us. It's the Kaysville Clinic property just off of the frontage road, Main Street. The property currently zoned PB has a medical office there now, but the desire, and the applicants are here to speak to this in more detail, would essentially be to go from kind of the 9 to 5 type office structure we typically see in the PB zone to actually allow for some overnight care and overnight stays. So what their system is as we understand it as staff, is they would have patients who come in, would have 24-hour care for 5 to 7 days, depending on the need, before they're then transferred to another facility. In particular for addiction recovery and treatment is that component that they're looking to accommodate. So based on that, as a rezone, as a planning commission, you're looking to see how it works in the specific area, how it conforms with the general plan. Ultimately, we're looking to give a recommendation to the city council, who will make the final decision. It is a public hearing, so if you'll allow time as well for the public to speak and share any comments or concern, I'll maybe turn it over to you to do that, and then I'd be happy to take any questions or from staff and myself. And again, the applicant is here, both the property owner and applicant, to speak to that tonight.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and open the public hearing. And we'll close the public hearing. We like those quick and easy public hearings. The applicant want to come and introduce yourself and our co-applicants?
Yeah, my name is Lane Kamalu, and I am currently a business owner there at Kaysville Clinic. And Jordan?
Jordan Birmingham. We're working together and trying to help these patients.
All right, thank you. Questions?
I guess the biggest question I have, Lane, is with the existing facility big enough to house that many people on up to that 7 days, or would you be expanding onto that? Or
yeah, we only plan on accommodating 2 to 4, probably 4 at the most. The development would be in the basement of the existing facility building, and the space is more than big enough for what we plan to do down there. It's a low-key operation. On purpose, we don't plan on having any signs out there anywhere. These people don't want to know that they're there. You know, they want to kind of be private. This is a detox facility. Now, right now, patients are detox, and when I say detox, if you don't understand what I'm saying, you can ask questions. But basically, detox involves taking patients that are addicted or dependent on drugs, commonly opioids, could be alcohol, could be other substances, and we take someone who is currently using, and we take them through the withdrawal process so that they can then be transferred to a rehab facility. Now, that's currently done in hospitals. Doesn't have to be, though. There are many rehab facilities or detox facilities outside the hospital. Here, there's one particular here in Utah, but other states have multiple facilities. So it's not unique that we would be doing something like that outside of the hospital. And frankly, we know we can do it better. The hospitals don't really do a good job of doing this. They they discharge people onto the street, they're, for all intents and purposes, still on drugs. Our purpose is to take them through that process in a safe and controlled environment, and then we transfer them to a facility, a 30-day residence, where they get the tools and the counseling and the things that they need to be successful off of medication. So we want to do this because we are not happy with the way it's done in the hospitals, and we know we can do it better, and we can serve the people better.
And we've also researched and gone to other facilities that are doing this, and spoke with them to find out some of the best practices on how to do that as well. And like you said, the hospitals right now are really taking addicted individuals and getting them addicted or dependent on other drugs and releasing them, sometimes even more drugs than they came in on. And so that's not, in our opinion, the right way to do it. So we found the facilities that are doing it successfully the other way, doing a great job. And then again, getting them transitioned and shuttled right over to an inpatient facility where we're truly rehabilitating, getting frontal lobe rehabilitation and really helping them long term.
With the detox, there's a couple different types. There's clinical and another one, isn't there? But we had this about a year ago, and somebody
Detox kind of a catch-all term.
They were
It's like physical, or medical, where you're just addressing that, or there's like more like a psychological or a clinical component.
Because there was a different.
Is that right?
There were like two different types.
In this context, we're talking about medical detox. So we're talking about taking someone who's physically dependent and taking them safely through the withdrawal process. So that's referred to as detox.
You're talking not just a little bit addicted. They're in some kind of a crisis at that point, aren't they?
They're not necessarily in a crisis. So they're either dependent on pain pills, could be heroin, could be alcohol, could be methamphetamines. They're dependent, which basically means they need the medication in order to function. But they want to get off, okay? They want help. And so the first part of that involves detoxing them, okay? And taking someone who is using heroin, for instance, on a daily basis, taking them off of heroin. And so by the time we send them to the rehab facility, they are the 30-day residents, they're off. They're off of medication. And then that's my job. And then Jordan comes in with the long-term rehab. So
you're just bridging that gap,
yes.
the medical detox, and then you're taking over, Jordan, and giving them tools to manage this new lifestyle that they want essentially on a day-to-day basis, and then hopefully for the rest of their life.
Correct.
So this, where they will be in this facility, is just that first window of, is it just a few days or a week or whatever?
Generally, probably anywhere from 3 to 7 days.
Okay.
Yeah. And we'd have full-time staff there.
So is that
Nursing,
24/7?
registered nurses be
They're
there
there?
24/7.
Is this a lockdown type
Physician
facility?
on call. It's not a lockdown.
Okay.
They're there voluntarily.
Correct. Yes, they're there voluntarily.
Okay.
And how do you, is it word of mouth? How do you market? How do you get the patients? How does that work?
Okay, go ahead.
So right now, currently, again, patients are reaching out for help. As we know, there's quite an epidemic going on. People needing help right now. And so, we're out there, Diamond Tree Recovery is out there getting referrals. And a lot of these patients need, that are dependent, whether it's the Suboxone that they've been put on because they were on heroin and they're trying to get them on a medically stable drug. It's still very addictive. And I can tell you firsthand that drug alone, they can't really live life. They can't go on vacation because they just are so dependent. If they don't have that, then that's when you see drug-seeking behavior. So these people that are dependent on these drugs already, they're out in our communities right now. We're trying to provide a solution so they can come and get off those and then come get that treatment. So when they find us, they call in and say, hey, we do a full clinical evaluation, psychological evaluation, and then we say, okay, this person meets criteria for detox. And right now, we're sending them to Ogden Regional or one of these other places. And then they put them on 12 milligrams of Suboxone, Librium, Celebrex, about 5 different medications, and then send it back to us. So right now, we're having to detox them in a residential facility, which the city does not want them doing, and we don't want to be doing that either. So we're trying to, again, bridge the gap with a safe, medical, supervised detox. And it just works a lot better that way, and they're a lot happier. And we've successfully done that. And Dr. Kamala has watched us be able to very safely and effectively taper and get people functioning a lot happier and better.
Where is your location?
So we're right there at the 200 North, 845 West, Kaysville.
I had another question. It'll come to me maybe in a second. Okay. So I recognize that this problem affects all levels of society, all levels of socioeconomic background or what have you. But are you primarily helping people who are insured, and do you help anyone who doesn't have insurance or who has is more on the lower end, lower middle class or on the poverty level, who needs the help but doesn't have any other resource?
Yeah, good question. I mean, really, yes to all.
Okay.
So we accept insurance, we accept self-pay, but we also offer scholarships for people who don't have it. Right now, we have 2 people in our program who we gave scholarships to because we did the evaluation. We felt like they truly needed it. They've got children, and they've got things they need to, actually provide for, and they can't do it while they're dependent or addicted to these drugs. And so we give scholarships. We try to do that as much as we can because we know people need the help, and as long as, we can create a balance and we get some people as insurance paying, we can help other people, and that's our goal. Our tagline is people helping people. We're very passionate about it. I personally went through that home here in Kaysville 10 years ago, and so I know that gave me the opportunity to get myself better, and now I'm full circle coming back and trying to help other people. So.
Yeah, I guess, and just FYI, I'm a family physician, and been a family physician for over 20 years. So I do general practice. In 2005, I started seeing more or treating more patients with addictions, and so I've kind of evolved my practice a little bit. So probably about half of what I do right now is treating addictions, and the other half is just general medicine. I've also spent 20 years in emergency medicine. I do that as well. So I have a lot of experience treating these patients, and they're living among you right now, and it doesn't discriminate. It comes in every shape and size. People who are dependent, people who are addicted, people who need help.
So from an appearance, you mentioned that physically it's not going to change. You're going to remodel the basement. So appearance-wise, from the outside, it's not going to look any different or have any different feel than it has right now.
Yeah,
I still continue to treat your regular patients up top, and
you wouldn't see any change in the appearance of the facility. Short term, long term, I don't know. I guess if we were bursting at the seams and we felt like we wanted to accommodate more patients, in order to do that, we need to build out a little bit more. I guess that would be something that we might consider, but at least initially, no.
That would be a rezone anyways of that.
Yeah. Have you had any of the neighbors, when the yellow sign went out, did you have any neighbors approach to talk to you? Or?
No.
Okay.
All right, if there's no other questions, can we get a recommendation?
Sure. I'll go ahead and make a recommendation that we do a rezone, or put it to the council for a rezone at 0.36 acres at 120 South Main Street from professional business to healthcare zoning for Jordan Birmingham and Kaysville Clinic, LLC.
Second. Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. All right, our fifth item, public hearing and request to rezone 0.78 acres of property at 167 North, 200 West from general commercial to old Kaysville Townsite residential for James Pearson.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. We'll give an introduction, and then our lone esteemed visitor is Mr. Pearson, so we'll give him a chance to speak and detail his request. I did want to make a note, just briefly. I was made aware about 4:30 today. So what's listed in the agenda is correct. This map here has the correct information. On one of the notices we sent out, it had 145 north, 200 west on the text side, but it also included this map that had it correct. So there may be some confusion for people. It was a typo on our part. Part of the reason for that 145 north is the applicant's address. So he owns properties right next to each other. I believe it's signed and noticed correctly is on the property and everything, but we'll check into that as staff if there's reason to correct that. But in case any public are watching and there's any confusion, we are looking at 167 north, 200 west. And the request this evening before you, you can see here on the zoning map, 200 north is essentially a straight line along the south side of the street of what was designated to the general commercial zone. The exception to that essentially is the Mountain America Credit Union that has acquired property expanded slightly to the south. Mr. Pearson currently owns a home on the property in question, used as a dwelling, and believes that that's probably going to continue to be its use and long-term best use based on the access and commercial viability kind of being tucked behind Jiffy Lube, and I forget the other businesses in that residence. But again, a rezone, as was the other application. Looking at it case by case on its merits, does this make sense for this property? Does it conform with the general plan? And it is also a public hearing, so after opening it and allowing the applicant to speak, we'll be looking for a recommendation from you this evening to pass forward to the council.
Thank you. Mr. Pearson, before we get to you, I'm going to open the public hearing, and then I'm going to close the public hearing because there's no public here to speak, and we'll let you address us. As the business owner, if you want to address us as the public, you're welcome to do that as well. But
well, the public's not here right now, so
so you're it.
I'm it. And well, my case is that the location as a piece of commercial property is not very good. It does not have the location because it's on a residential side street and boxed in by the other strip malls on the north and the west. Everything else around that property is residential homes. I live right next door to it. I own the property next door. The home is really old. It was built around 1900, and there's a garage there too, a 30 by 40 foot garage. Both of them structures are basically liabilities to developing it commercially because they have to be torn down. And all the trees and the stumps and whatnot in order to utilize that commercially doesn't add to its desirability, I don't feel. And I've had it for sale since it was rezoned. And I've had one person call me and say, I want to buy your driveway for $10,000. And I was like, no, I can't sell you my driveway. But on the west side, when they built that L-shaped strip mall, they were interested in using the back part of the lot for parking, but it was not engineeringly feasible to tear out all of that land in order to make it congruent with the rest of the parking area. So that never went forward. So I'm still sitting here looking at the property now. It's deteriorating, and I have to, being the owner, I have an obligation to maintain it. I have to keep it insured, so I have to have somebody living in it. Right now I have a nephew in there. Over the years, I've had my 3 children, one at a time, move in. And but I'm going to have to spend a lot of money on there, putting new roofs on it, and upgrading the old home, which I would prefer not to do. I have a person right now who's interested in buying it and using it as a residence, but he doesn't want it as a commercial property. So the purpose of my request is to rezone it and sell it as a residence.
Okay.
Which would be which would fit right in with the neighborhood too. Although it doesn't look like it would fit right in with the zoning map over there. It looks kind of odd for it to stick out in the middle like that, but You know, it's been, when did they rezone the 300 feet on either side? Back in 94 or 5? When the heck was that?
Yeah, I'm not certain. I just
It was a
know
long
it's
time
been that
ago.
way for quite a while.
And it's been sitting there. I mean, and there are other residential properties on 200 North, right across the street from the Jiffy Lube, that is still, somebody's living in it, and nobody's interested in buying it and developing it. So I'm just, my point is that that one right there especially is, I don't know, somebody's living there. It's commercial property. But the idea that these other properties, the residences that are still on Second North are still residences. Some of them are being used as businesses. Others are being rented. I see my property as not having a very good chance of having a developer want to utilize it. Even for an office, it's still kind of a big piece for an office, being 3/4 of an acre. An office doesn't really need all that space. So I'm kind of stuck with it, and I'd like to unload it. And rather than, I want to retire too, and right now I'm faced with spending a lot of money out of my retirement to upgrade it. There's also another issue that I'd like to, it's not anything to do with, that can't be resolved, but the way it is now, all of the water from both sides of the street, there's a sewer hole right here with a pipe that runs underneath the road and drains all the water from this side and this side into the front of this property. Now, when this house, if it ever was developed commercially, there would have to be sidewalks and a sewer pipe put in, which would cause all the water to now drain into the property next door, which is just an open ditch. Now, the open ditch was the old irrigation water that is now no longer in use because we have pressurized systems, and they're no longer maintained. And as a result, they don't work anymore. In other words, if we had a real heavy rain and this was developed commercially, all the water would end up in this one ditch in front of my house, and it couldn't get down the road because this whole side is all blocked in already.
Just so we can have things on the record, Mr. Person, you mind if I have you go to the mic as well? And then we have a laser pointer there if you need to continue to point.
Sorry,
That's okay.
I didn't realize this was here for me. Well, those are just, that's a minor problem that I could foresee for the property on 145 North, right next door to there, if they closed off that ditch. Right now, with the way the ditch is, it fills up with water, and all the water just seeps into the ground. It's not a problem. But I could foresee that becoming a problem if all the water was to have to drain into the one irrigation ditch that's in front of the 145 property, which is where I live.
Okay. All right, questions? I will admit I was talking with Betty about this before we started. I honestly thought this was zoned Old Town originally. It fits within the surrounding neighbors. It's not uncharacteristically out of place from an Old Town view. It's not a brand new home or anything like that. I was surprised to learn that it was actually zoned general commercial. I thought it ended after the Jiffy Lube. So,
well, from a development standpoint, it's not you're right. It's not, to me, I'm looking at it going, it's not a very desirable piece. If the frontage on 200, I mean, if that was all one parcel, like the shopping center next door, you could do something nice there, but it's kind of blocked in or landlocked in almost with that little strip center right in the front of it, and then the lube shop. So it does make a challenge if somebody wants to try to develop that because there's no exposure, no frontage. It's a challenging piece.
What's the square footage of the house?
It's like 1,500 square foot. It's not very big. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath. Pretty old, built in 1900. The original part of the house was made out of adobe and logs, and it kind of rests on a pile of rocks.
So you wonder who would
And that's
buy
where
that.
that's where I'm going with the upgrades.
Yeah.
I can't.
So is it
the roof on one side is looking like it's starting to sag a little. I'm afraid I might have to put new trusses up.
Well, I mean, one of our considerations is, okay, so if we rezone it, we know what's there now, but what could go in under the old town if we rezone it? And if I understand the zone correctly, last time I read it, let's say hypothetically, I don't know if this is what the buyer wants to do, but let's just say hypothetically, the buyer wants to come in and tear it down and rebuild a new structure. Well, what they have to do is two things. One, they have to catalog essentially what is there. They have to document the structure before they tear it down and say the history of it. I think they actually do some research and submit a report to the city that says, here's the history of this parcel or what have you, or in this structure. And the city might say, oh, and at the same time, here's our new plans. Here's what we're going to be doing. And the city will say, okay, we accept that, and we accept your new plans. And in conjunction with the new plans, there has to be certain types of materials used. It's, I think, the only zone in all of residential zone in all of Kaysville that dictates the type of materials and look, generally speaking, of the home. And so, my point, getting to my point, is, if that were the case, I'm confident that what we're to go in and replace what's there is probably going to be an improvement.
Yeah.
So,
I would agree.
And it would probably still be in keeping with the general feel of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
You're not going to put a McMansion in there.
Right. Well, I mean, the general feel of the neighborhood actually might include mansions, because on the corner there is a mansion. But yeah, I agree with your point. Yeah.
And I think the last couple of meetings we've talked about commercial and some of the scarcity, but most of that's been on the west side. I think when you're looking at commercial too, you've got to look at the conformity of it and where it fits. This one, like I said, if that was all, those were combined, and you were to do one development on there, it makes sense. But how it is now, I don't think it makes sense. Keep it.
And I mean, on that same point, so we rezone this to Old Town, let's say, or what is it, RT? We rezone this to RT.
Yeah.
And then let's say the new buyer doesn't do anything with this, and maybe their plans change or what have you, and they sit on it for 10 or 15 years. And then by that point, maybe this place is ready for an upgrade, and then a new developer comes in and says, you know what, I'll buy it all and make this a nice parcel, like you said, and then rezone it back to commercial. Then great, that's fine.
Yeah.
And that's just a question that could be answered down the road. But right now, it makes sense, I think, probably to.
Yeah, I think it's the best use for the property.
Yeah.
And still conforms and fits with the neighborhood and the general plan.
Yeah. I agree.
All right. If there's no other questions, can we get a recommendation?
I will make a motion that we recommend approval of a rezone of 0.78 acres at 167 North, 200 West from GC to the RT zoning district.
I'll second that.
Aye.
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 Thank you. Now it's up to the city
Good luck.
council to.
Yes.
Yep.
That.
Correct. Right.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. We have apparently exhausted our public, but we will make one final call to the public anyway. Seeing our public getting ready to leave, and if you have other issues you'd like to bring up,
If you make them stick around too long, you might lose your recommendation. I'll just
thank you.
I know, I'm certainly.
Hopefully the sarcasm was caught there. You're very welcome to make another comment if you do have it.
Yeah, right.
I know, I'm certainly exhausted from this meeting.
Yeah.
It's been a taxing meeting.
I don't know if you guys acknowledged, but congratulations goes to Lyle on being
Thank you, guys.
promoted and being given the job as community development director. That's pretty cool.
Oh, yeah, I hadn't heard that. Nice job.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
Pretty
he's
cool.
got some good candidates. So,
Good. Yeah.
Well, we hope to do half as good as the predecessor, and probably be a couple things different too. So
Yeah. And they're changing with Andy. They're doing that. Now, how are they doing that? Because they're changing the whole department a little bit, aren't
a
they?
lot of it's still being worked out, I think. But in large part, Andy was a PE, an engineer, and so he was a city engineer who also functioned as community development director by our ordinance. And I am not an engineer by background, and so a lot of those duties will head over towards Public Works, who deals with utilities and roads and stuff anyway. So it's more commonly seen in cities,
And
at least in my
like an
experience.
outside
that's out.
consultant, right?
And then, yeah, we can use outside consultants for the time being. So there'll probably still be some need to get additional staffing to fill the void, so to speak. But
I know some cities
still being figured out.
I mean, and Wilf, I'm sure, knows this. They fully contract out their engineering.
Yeah,
You know,
Yeah, a lot do now.
Clearfield does.
yeah.
All right, Lyle,
Yeah,
any reports, calendaring?
Couple items. So I'll skip to the calendar, and then I've got a report and something for you guys here tonight. Thanksgiving is in 2 weeks, so I'm guessing nobody
A
wants to
short
be
meeting?
here.
Oh, darn, I was hoping we'd have a meeting.
Wilf was going to bring pie. And
Hey, you're all invited to pie night at our house as a tradition.
Hey,
We do it the night before Thanksgiving every year.
okay, you heard it.
Yeah, we do.
So
That's what we need to do is fill up on pie the
Yeah.
night before
That's right.
Thanksgiving.
Well, it's weird. It evolved at our place because my wife was, doing Thanksgiving dinner, and she says, I got to do some of this ahead of time. So she started making the pies the night before. And then other friends and neighbors and everybody was like, hey, this is really cool. And pretty soon it just evolved, and we have this big pie night now the night before Thanksgiving.
well, we won't ruin the holiday. My suggestion is to push things to the 29th. We have a fifth Thursday in November. Often we meet once in December, depending on what kind of items we haven't come through. So I'd be hesitant to say let's skip second meeting in November and then probably have
December.
just a little bit in December. So if that seems acceptable to the committee or the commission, let's plan on the 29th. If there are conflicts with that, please let me know.
Yeah, there's a high probability I won't be here on the 29th, but that's fine. So,
Okay. And then the other here before you leave, so we are no longer going to be printing you packets. We're making the jump to go digital. So I have a device to give to each one of you. We're going to try and just jump right into this. Bear with us on any hiccups. So part of the idea being we want you to be plugged in. One, to have not just the packet that we've been giving you typically, but we think with the device you'll also be able to pull up general plan, zoning maps, bylaws, other ordinances and things. You can do some research while you're up there.
We won't make you do it on the fly in front of everybody.
Well, and I'm still willing to do that. So
We kind of like that, actually.
So
Keep you on your toes.
can't see through me. I don't know where.
the Wi-Fi.
Is the Wi-Fi capable of?
So that's Ryan claims that it will work, and I think this next week may be a trial run. So I have a recommendation for you on the 29th for the first test with it. Because typically when you log into the guest Wi-Fi, you pull up your browser, you accept the terms, and theoretically it's got all the bandwidth capacity that we use on our internal network. But what I would recommend when we send you out the packet information for the next meeting, download it onto your device so that you have it just in case.
Yeah.
Because my experience and others using the guest Wi-Fi it's not always been that consistent. We're hopeful maybe the device is part of that. And if not, we do have alternate solutions we think we could go to get you some logins and get on our internal network and such. So there will be a little bit of a learning curve, but unless we just go after it, then we probably won't find all those things and figure it out. What we'll be doing also is we'll get you on a Dropbox links where we'll send packets. I'll have the general plan and other planning documents, maps, demographic data. I mean, you name it. We'll try and keep that in there so that you guys have things you can access to help you make decisions on a more regular basis. And so the devices are yours. Thank you for being on our commission. Our IT is not interested in taking them back. You do what you want with them.
Merry Christmas.
But that also means they're not going to service them or deal with issues and things on them.
we're forfeiting our fees for the next 6 months.
yeah. FYI.
Well, and in fact,
we were planning on that for Christmas.
as we've looked into it with postage, printing, all that,
absolutely.
we're probably break even and maybe even a little better. Plus, it's worth it if you've got access to additional information to, we hope, do some better decision making.
So what you're really saying is we should have gotten rid of Andy long ago, and we would have got to have this.
If you wanted the device.
This is the new regime.
You're
all
watching
right.
this, Andy.
So yes, hopefully it works out well. Keep the feedback coming because I know the council does it. I think it functions very well for them. We hope it can be the same for you, but it will be a change.
Not that but it's probably, what you're doing makes sense because when we did this at Salt Lake City and we gave all of the planning commissioners an iPad, and then when they left, we had them return the iPad. But by the time they left and we got the iPad back, it was old technology.
Out of date. You're not going to use it anyway.
It was like, and it was like, well, we're not going to give this to anybody else because it's an old model now.
Yeah,
old
store it in
version.
a drawer or something.
Yeah.
I vote that we try and see if we can't maybe scrounge a couple of really old iPads and just tell them this is what was left.
one.
If they don't listen, every one of you to show up with your device, and they'll come with the paper copy and see how they feel. So hopefully that seems acceptable to you. I mean, I think most of you grab your packet when you leave the door anyway, or at least I see you coming in with it, right? So instead, make sure you bring your device, and if not, maybe I'll have. Zoom in on the screen so you can follow along, or have maybe one or two paper copies ready to go just in case. But so we'll give it a try. The feedback is welcome and appreciated as we experience it. And that Wi-Fi in particular is one we want to keep an eye on to make sure it is functioning for you. So
awesome, thanks.
Thank you.
I think the extent of my comments and correspondence. So unless you guys have other things to share, catch you in a few
If
weeks.
there's nothing else to share, if we could have a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Let's adjourn. Thank you, everybody.
I think I was thinking is